What's up, folks? My name is Jeff Everhart, and in this video, I'm going to introduce you to Knock. Knock is a powerful notifications infrastructure provider that allows you to create and model complex, multi-step, multi-channel notification workflows with only a few lines of code. In this video, we're going to look at how we can integrate in-app notifications using Knock with Next.js 13. So let's get started. Before we get too deep into code, I'll give you an overview of the application I've built out for this exercise. We've got a test app called Full Stack Workout, a workout community for software developers built using Next.js 13 and the app directory. We have authentication through a couple of different providers provided by Auth.js. So if I go ahead and authenticate with GitHub, we should get kicked through to our dashboard, which is going to show us all of the workouts that people on our team have completed. There's just a couple of pages in here where we can, see our own workouts, create new workouts, and this is that application that we'll be adding in-app notifications to. So inside of the code, we've got a couple of different things that we use to build this. Obviously, the interface is built with Tailwind UI. And then we've layered on a couple of different technologies for our backend. So this is all built using Vercel Postgres. And then on top of that, we've layered Prisma as our ORM. So you can see here that we've got just a couple of models, some of which handle our sessions and users and notifications, and then also a model to store our workouts. We'll dig into the code a little bit further in the next section of this video, but to get started, there are a few things we'll need to do in the Knock dashboard. So I'm going to hop back into the browser and open up the Knock dashboard. I have here the integrations page open and channels selected. To get started, we'll need to configure a new channel integration for our app notifications. In Knock, channels represent instances of a configured provider, like Twilio or SendGrid, for example. But we'll navigate to the in-app option and select Knock. And then we'll click Next. And then I'm pretty much going to accept the defaults that Knock provides for me and go ahead and create this channel. Now that we have our in-app notification channel configured, we'll go ahead and add a workflow. So I'll click into the Workflows tab and then click this Create Workflow button. We'll go ahead and give our workflow a name. I'm going to call this New Workout. And as I type a name for this workflow, Knock is going to auto-generate me a key. And this is the string that we'll use to invoke or trigger our workout from code, so it needs to be unique. We'll go ahead and click Create to get that started. And now we'll see the beginnings of our workflow editor screen. So here we've got a trigger, which is our notification call that we'll use to invoke or trigger our workflow. But we'll go ahead and click this Edit Steps button to add some steps to our workflow. So workflows are a very core feature of the Knock platform, and they're what allow developers to build rich programmatic notification processes around these primitives. So we can see here that we've got a bunch of options for different steps to add, like delay, batching, or even fetching additional data from another HTTP service, or branching to create nice if-else experiences. But we also have our different channels. So we'll go ahead and drag our in-app channel over onto our workflow builder canvas, and then we'll adjust some options on that in-app notification. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is actually edit the template a little bit. So we'll pop out here into Knock's template builder. We can see that I've already pre-populated some test payload, if you will, for our workout data, right? So we're going to get this workout, this object that has workout text as a key. Then inside of that, it has a value and a pair of that. So we'll go ahead and edit this notification just a little bit. And so we'll say, instead of activity, we'll say, workout colon, and we'll open up some curly braces and we'll say workout text dot value is what we're going to interpolate here. And then once that parses, we'll go ahead and just make sure that formats well and then save those changes. And so this is a really powerful feature, again, of Knock, allowing you to have this nice expressive template builder, and then also allowing you to populate this with test data and run test runs if you want to do that. We're actually going to skip back to our application. And the last thing that we'll do in here is we're going to go ahead and commit this change to development. So Knock is really built around adapting itself to your development workflows. So as you'll see, when I hop back into the dashboard proper, I'm actually in sort of our development environment. We also have a production environment, but here we can test and model our workflow, run all the tests we want before we actually commit that to a specific environment. So we'll commit those changes to make sure that they're live and available for us to use inside of the development environment. And then we can give an optional message. So we'll commit that, and then we'll hop back into our account. So now that we're ready to move back to coding, I'm going to go ahead and in the left-hand side of the Knock dashboard, I'm going to open up the docs in a new tab. And then on that left-hand side, I'm going to scroll down to Building in App UI, and then open up the React tutorials and go to the feeds example, which is pretty much what we'll be following for most of this video. We'll look at how we can integrate this React feed with the pre-built components into our existing Next.js project. Okay, so now that we're ready to start coding, we're going to want to install a few dependencies. So I'll go ahead and copy this reference to the Knock Labs React notification feed library, and I'll hop back into VS Code and kill my dev server. So we'll go ahead and get ready to NPM install this. And in addition to this, we'll also install the Knock Labs /node library as well, so that we can do a couple of things in our backend Next.js environment. So we'll go ahead and install those and then move on to the next step. So with those dependencies installed, we're going to hop back into our Knock dashboard and navigate to API keys, and we're going to copy this secret API key. From there, we'll pop back into our .env file and we'll add another entry right below our Google client secret called Knock secret API key. And go ahead and save that. And then we'll come back down here and we'll fire back up our dev server, and we'll get ready to start implementing our in-app notification feed. From here, I'm going to navigate into my Finder window and open up the shared layout that's a part of my dashboard route, so this layout.tsx file. If we pop back over here to our application, we can see that we have a number of different routes all shared under this dashboard route. So team, workouts, calendar, not all these have anything right now. But these all share this same layout file. And this is where we, as a part of Next.js and Auth.js, implement the bulk of our authentication checking. The user uses Auth.js to authenticate, and then we're checking this server session and basically seeing whether or not it's valid and whether or not there's a user and whether or not they should be here. And if not, we're going to redirect them. So we're going to use this file to identify some of our users with Knock. Now, user identification is a very important concept in Knock, and so I'll pop back out into the docs, scroll all the way up here into the concepts list, and click on users. And if you want to read more about identifying users, I would definitely recommend checking out this guide. But again, very important concept. Since Knock is such a full-featured notification platform, it creates basically a cache of your user's data, some parts of your user data model, so that it can store things like email addresses, phone numbers, unique identifiers, along with a bunch of their individual preferences. So we're going to implement the process of identifying our users in this file so that Knock knows about them and can send them notifications. To get started identifying our users, we're going to first import the Knock node client that we installed in the last step. And then down below our existing authentication code, we're going to create a new instance of that called Knock client. So we'll say new const Knock client equals new Knock. And then in here, we're going to pass our process .env.knock, I believe it's called secret API key. And then from there, we're going to tab down a line, and then we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to call this knock user. We're going to set that equal to, we're going to await this knock client.users.identify. And then this function is going to take as its first argument a unique user ID. So we'll just set that equal to session.user.id. So we're going to use basically the same unique identifier that appears as a part of this backend system that we're creating as our user's unique ID in knock. And then the second argument is going to be an object, and this is some additional data that we want to pass it. And so we'll go ahead and set a name, and this is going to be session.user.name. And then the second one is we're going to set an email, and so this is going to be session.user.email. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and console.log our knock user. And then we'll go ahead and save our file. And let's come back and let's just refresh our application and see what happens when we load our dashboard. Okay, so there we can see that that new knock user data is being logged out. And then if we come back into our knock dashboard under users, we can see that we have one, and I've already previously registered this other user. So that is in essence how we identify users. And there are a couple of different ways that you can do that. We've done individual identification here, but there's also inline identification. And again, this is just an example application. So this may not actually be the best place to identify users in a real world application. You might want to do that as they create an account. But again, we got to identify them with a unique ID. And there are a couple of different ways you can append different pieces of information onto that to make it more meaningful. And then we can also, again, cache and store additional user data as a part of the knock system. So now that we have some initial code identifying our users inside of the knock platform, let's turn our attention to actually implementing the notification feed. So I'm going to create a component inside of this sort of global shared components directory, and I'm going to call this notification menu. And then we'll go ahead and specify that this is going to be a client component. Give that a save, and then I'm going to hop back out here into the knock docs and head back down to our React examples. And I'm going to start by pretty much just copying most of this example right here. And then we'll go ahead and paste that into our component. So there are a couple of additional things that we're going to need to do here. We can already see some TypeScript errors that we will go ahead and fix. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to get a couple of different details from knock. So we need this public API key to use this. And for right now, instead of getting that from my .env file, I'm actually going to hop back to the knock dashboard and just go ahead and copy that public key and paste it in here as a string. We'll rework parts of this later on to make it a little bit more production ready, but for right now, as we're getting it up and running, this is fine. So we'll also hop back into our integration screen, and we need the channel ID of our in-app feed. So I'll click in there, grab that channel ID, and again, just pop that in there as a string. And then the last thing that we'll need as a part of this is we'll need, again, our current user ID. So we already went through the process of identifying our user. And instead of passing that all the way down from our layout, I'm actually just going to hop up here and we're going to just import another package. So we're going to import use session, which is an option from the Next.auth React package. And then inside of our component, we're going to go ahead and pull out, use that hook. So we'll go ahead and grab our session and then the status, and then we'll set that equal to use session. And then down in here, we'll actually, instead of this being current user ID, this is going to be session .user.id. And we'll throw, for right now, just a ts ignore on that since it's possible that it would be undefined. So there are just a couple of other changes that I'm going to make to this component before we actually render it inside of our next application. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, because this obviously relies on a couple of different pieces of client state, we're getting this session. And I also really want to make sure that it runs on the client. So I'm going to go ahead and just specify this additional useEffect down here. And then we'll go ahead and pass this function in. And what I want to do is we're going to create some additional state that is just going to really tell us whether or not this is on the client, really. So if the useEffect is ran, it'll be true, and if not, it'll be false. And it'll just give us a nice, easy way to tell whether or not this is all sort of executed and hydrated on the client. And so we'll go ahead and initialize this to false so that isClient is false. And then down in here inside of the useEffect, yeah, we're going to set isClient to true. And then additionally, we'll just, pass in this empty dependencies array for right now. And that's great. Okay. And so then additionally, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to go back into our nav component. And we're going to grab a couple of different things. So I'm actually going to use this bell icon from Tailwind UI. And we're going to do sort of some loading state as well. So I'm just going to copy this import right here, and we'll remove these things since we won't need them. But we'll hop back into the nav and go and see where this is actually being implemented in our menu. Yeah, so we'll copy this component right here. And then what we're going to do down here is we're just going to do a conditional check. And so we're going to say if isClient, and then I guess we want to say status. Again, this is our authentication status, triple equals authenticated. So if it's running on the client and if we are authenticated, then we will show this feed, and then we'll just sort of do this and go ahead and wrap our initial, our knock provider in this other paren. And then if not, we're going to render that bell icon. So here we're just sort of making some changes to our client component where we're saying, if this useEffect is ran on the client, making sure that it's on the client. This was just something I had to kind of tweak a little bit to get to work with Next 13 and some hydration issues that I was having. So we're just doing this additional client check right here. And then we're checking the status of our use session hook from auth.js. So if the status equals authenticated, then we're going to go ahead and render the feed provider with the options that we've provided it. And then if not, we're just going to render the regular bell icon that we have as a part of our regular nav menu. So all that stuff looks good to me. We don't have any TypeScript errors or anything. So I'm going to hop back into my nav component, and then we're actually just going to import this. And so what do we want to do? Notification menu. Let's see, are we exporting this as a default? Nope, we need to go ahead and export this. Export default your app layout. Notification menu. And then, yeah, we did make that a default export. So we'll go ahead and clean that up real quick. And then we'll just come down here to where our bell icon was. And instead of implementing that, we'll go ahead and implement our notification menu. And then we'll pop back out here and just refresh our application and see if anything changes. Nope, everything looks good and is still rendering. All right, so now that we're here, we've got one more step to actually make this work. And so we can see that now if we click it, it's rendering our knock notifications panel, which is great. So we've made great progress. We just have one more step, and that's really triggering our workflow. So let's talk about how we can do that. Okay, So now that we're ready to actually trigger our workflow, I'm going to go ahead and just close out some of these tabs I got open in my code editor to just give us a little bit more space to work with now that we don't need things like the layout and the notification menu. So let's take a look at the structure of this application, because this particular app, if we come to workouts, go to new workout, we have a create route here with a page, error, and action.tsx. And let's take a look at the page. The page actually just implements this new workout form, which is a client-side component that is going to call our create workout React server action. So that is all a server-side function that is stored in this action.tsx. And right now we can see what that looks like. I've got use server up at the top. I'm pulling in some additional packages from Next.auth and Prisma to both authenticate and figure out who the current user is as they're creating it, ensure that they're allowed to create a resource, and then we're creating that resource. So what we're going to be able to do is actually just add a couple of lines to this file to trigger our new workout notification workflow. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to import Knock, the Knock node client that we used earlier. And then we're going to, right below the result of our workout, right? So this is Prisma creating a new workout in our Vercel Postgres backend. So we're going to come down and we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to just call this right now other users. And then we're going to set this equal to an async Prisma call. And so we're going to say Prisma, user, we're going to do find many. And so we're going to basically here get a list of all of the users that we want to identify. And so for this application, since there's not a bunch of users, we're just getting everybody who isn't the current user. So inside of this, we're going to pass a where clause. And then we're going to say where the ID, not session.user.id. Okay, so right here we're getting finding many where the ID of that user is not equal to the current user's ID. So basically getting everybody who isn't the current user. And then we're also going to pass in a secondary condition there. We're going to do select, and this is just going to allow us to return a subset of the results. And so we're just going to say ID true. And so this is just going to give us back a list of just the IDs and not all of the stuff from the users. Okay, so that's piece one, right? We needed to get a list of the other users in the application, the other users that we wanted to identify. And then step two is using that list to trigger a new workflow. So we're going to say, and for this, we can just go ahead and await this because we don't need to know that it happened because we'll be able to view that in our Knock dashboard. So we're going to use Knock client. Oh, and I forgot a step somewhere. I need to create a new Knock client. Yeah. So let's go back and do that up here where we create our new Prisma client. So we'll do const Knock client, just like we did in the last step, equals new Knock. And then we're going to pass that in process.env.knock secret API key. All right, so that's our configured instance of the Knock client. Yep, and then right below our get other users call, we're going to use both the result, the new workout that we created, and our list of other users. So there, we're going to await this asynchronous Knock client function. So we'll do Knock client dot notify, and then this is going to trigger our workflow, right? So this is where we need the key of the workflow that we created. So for new workout, that key is just new workout. So we'll pass that in as a string. So that tells us what workflow that we are triggering with this notification. And then we'll go ahead and from here pass in a couple of different options. So the first one is going to be actor, and that is essentially the Knock user who is triggering this notification. So that's for us just going to be session.user.id. And then recipients is going to be our list of other users, but we're going to want to do a quick mapping here. So we're going to do other users.map, and we're going to just return basically a subset of this array. And we'll get my equal sign, and then we'll just return user.id. So we don't need all of the user's information here. We just need their user ID. Other users.map. Let me see. Okay. And then we'll do recipients, and then we're also going to pass through data. And this was our custom payload. So if we pop back in here and look at our workflow and edit the steps, let's see if we can pop in there. And remember our message template, we're passing in an object that looked like this. So we had workout text, and then inside of that we had another object, and then we had value, and then the key, or the value as the key. And then we had, what are we going to do? Result dot, I think just text, right? Yeah, result dot text, which is equivalent to what we had over there. Oh yeah, and here we want to pass in user full. Okay, for that. All right, now, so all that looks good. Let's just double check what we're doing one more time. So we've imported our not client. We configured a new instance of that not client. After we create our new workout with Prisma, we get a list of our other users, which is basically everything where their ID is not equal to the current user. And then we use the not client to trigger the new workout workflow with the current user as our actor, all the other users as recipients, and then we're passing in this custom data payload. So excellent. I'm going to go ahead and save this out, and we can move to testing our application. So to test our application, I'm going to open up this other web browser window where I have another user loaded into this application. We'll just go ahead and refresh just to make sure their authentication works, and do the same thing here. And we can see, okay, in both browsers, each user's knock in-app notification panel is rendering. So we'll come over here and we'll go ahead and maybe create a new workout, and we'll just say, I don't know, we lifted some weights. We'll be vague about it and go ahead and add that workout. And as we do, we should see over here in this other browser that notification come through. So if we go ahead, let's go ahead and test adding another workout and say we, ran 3 miles, and we'll go ahead and add that workout, which should trigger our workflow again. And if we pop back open to our second browser, we can see that, okay, that's working just as we expect it to. It's accumulating those notifications on our notification icon. And if we click them in, we can see that our notifications are passing through exactly the way that we expect. The text of our workout is being reflected there in the messages. And then as this user, I can go ahead and archive those notifications. Like I mentioned, there were a couple of additional security things that we probably wanted to do before we move to production. So let's go ahead and implement those now. Okay, so that additional security measure that I mentioned is something known as enhanced security. So if we come back out into our knock dashboard and come down to our API keys menu, we can see here that we have this option to enable enhanced security mode. So I'm going to go ahead and click that on. And what that does is it sets an additional requirement for using this notification menu feed and the public knock client. Because right now, the way that this works is if anybody had our public API key, which gets shipped in our client bundle, and a particular feed ID and a user ID, they could essentially gain access to a user's notifications. So we need to, for production, add an additional layer of security that prevents somebody from doing that with just those 3 pieces of information. So we do that using an application signing key. And I'm going to go ahead and click regenerate to regenerate an application signing key. And then we'll go ahead, and this ends up being extremely long. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and then move this over to my applications.env file. And this is going to be called knock signing key. And then we'll go ahead and save that. And again, like I said, that's super long. So super well encrypted. And then from there, we're actually going to want to make a change to our layout.tsx. So here where we identify the user, we're going to add an additional step. And we're going to use the signing key and the user's ID to generate a secure JSON web token that we're going to pass through from our server to that client component. So we'll go ahead and create a new variable called knock token. And then we'll set that equal to, in this, I'm going to go ahead and just preemptively throw a tsignore comment here. And we'll set that equal to knock, and this is not on the knock instance. So this is a static method of the knock client. So we're going to do sign user token. Okay, and so the first argument is just going to be our user ID. So who is signing this token? And then we're going to pass it an object with two different arguments. This is going to be the signing key, which is just going to be our process.env.knock signing key. And then we'll also come down here and we're going to pass an expires in seconds option. So we'll do, I don't know, set this for long and we'll do 60 times 60. And that's going to create our knock token. So from there, we're going to also need to pass this knock token through. And so this, we're going to have to do a little bit of prop drilling. And in a real production environment, maybe you've got a more preferable way of doing this. But this is what I'm going to do for now. We'll just pass this into our nav component. And then here, we'll need to come up here and update this. And just give this a type of string. And then from here, we're going to come down and we're also going to want to pass that into our notification menu. And then we'll save this and we'll need to do this, add that same prop to our notification menu component. And then from here, we will pass this into the knock feed provider as user token. And we'll just pass knock token in there. And then we can go ahead and save that. And if we hop back out into our application, and we'll go ahead and just, refresh these browser windows, make sure that we're loading the latest code. We'll go ahead and test another notification workflow. And great, we can see that everything is still working as we expect. Awesome. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me. That was a lot to cover in a really short time. Knock is a really powerful platform, and we only scratched the surface of the opportunities with just in-app notifications. And there are tons of other providers or different workflows that you can create using Knock. So thanks again for watching. Until later, bye.